Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever noticed this strange pattern in your life? You sleep late, you sleep tired, yet your eyes suddenly open between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. The world is silent, your phone is quiet, but your mind is wide awake. You try to turn sides, you try to force sleep, but something within you refuses to rest. And you ask yourself, why does this keep happening to me? Today, let me tell you, this is not random, and it is not a coincidence. In ancient wisdom, this time between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is called Brahma Muhurta, a sacred window when the universe is calm and the mind is naturally receptive. Nature slows down so that you can speed up inwardly. When the noise outside reduces, the noise inside becomes louder. This is often the time when suppressed thoughts, unspoken emotions, and unfinished dreams knock on the door of your consciousness. Your soul is not disturbing your sleep, it is asking for your attention. Many people think waking up at this hour means stress or anxiety, and yes, sometimes it does. But look deeper. Stress is not the enemy, ignorance is. When your life is moving too fast during the day, when you ignore your inner voice, it chooses the quietest hour to speak. Between 3 and 5 a.m., your mind is not distracted by the world, so it finally tells you the truth about what hurts, what's missing, and what needs healing. When you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the first reaction is usually frustration. You check the time, turn to the other side, and silently complain about how tired you will feel the next day. The mind immediately labels this experience as a disturbance, something wrong that needs to be fixed. But in reality, this moment is rarely accidental. It is a signal, subtle, intelligent, and deeply personal, pointing towards something within you that is asking to be acknowledged. In the stillness of these early hours, external stimulation is at its lowest. There are no messages arriving, no expectations demanding your attention, and no roles to perform. This absence of noise creates a rare space where the mind becomes transparent. Thoughts that are usually suppressed by routine, distraction, and constant engagement finally rise to the surface. What you experience as sudden wakefulness is often the mind's way of saying that something unresolved has reached a point where it can no longer be ignored. Many people live their waking hours on autopilot. Days are filled with deadlines, responsibilities, and the pressure to meet expectations, both personal and social. Emotions are postponed, questions are delayed, and inner discomfort is pushed aside with the promise of later. But the mind does not forget. When given silence, it demands honesty. The early morning awakening becomes the mind's most direct form of communication, a signal that something within needs clarity, closure, or conscious attention. This signal does not always point to a problem in the traditional sense. Sometimes it indicates a misalignment rather than a crisis. You may be functioning efficiently but not meaningfully, achieving goals without feeling fulfilled, or appearing calm while carrying unexpressed tension. The body rests, but the mind remains alert because it senses imbalance. Sleep becomes shallow, not because you are weak, but because your inner intelligence is alerting you to recalibrate. It is important to understand that this wakefulness is not driven by fear alone. It can also be driven by growth. Just as the body experiences discomfort when muscles are developing, the mind experiences restlessness when it is evolving. When you are on the edge of an important realization, decision, or transformation, the mind naturally becomes more active during moments of silence. The early hours provide a neutral, undistracted environment where deeper awareness can emerge. Instead of reacting with irritation or anxiety, observing this moment with curiosity changes everything. When you stop treating it as a disruption and start recognizing it as information, your relationship with your own mind begins to shift. The question moves from why can't I sleep to what is my mind trying to tell me? This simple shift transforms the experience from resistance to insight. Often the signal points toward emotions that have been rationalized away during the day. Unspoken dissatisfaction, unresolved conflict, or neglected aspirations. These thoughts do not surface to overwhelm you. They surface because the mind trusts that you are finally quiet enough to listen. Ignoring them repeatedly can intensify the signal, while acknowledging them often brings unexpected calm. When you respond to this wakefulness with awareness rather than force, the nervous system gradually relaxes. Writing, reflection, slow breathing, or silent observation can turn this time into a period of mental clarity rather than mental struggle. Over time, as the mind feels heard and understood, the need for this signal naturally reduces. Sleep improves not through control, but through understanding. What appears to be a disturbance is often the mind's most refined form of guidance. It does not shout during the day because the day is too loud. It waits patiently for the quietest hour to speak. When you learn to listen without judgment, this early awakening stops being an inconvenience and starts becoming a doorway to deeper self, awareness, emotional balance, and conscious living. There is a reason the mind chooses silence: to communicate its deepest truths. During the day, life is filled with movement, interaction, and constant mental engagement. Thoughts are repeatedly interrupted by conversations, responsibilities, and digital noise. In such an environment, the inner voice rarely gets the space to express itself clearly. But when night deepens and the world slows down, a different quality of awareness emerges. Silence is not empty, it is receptive. It becomes the background against which the soul finally feels safe enough to speak. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the external world offers minimal stimulation. Streets are quiet, expectations pause, and the nervous system naturally shifts into a more introspective state. In this stillness, the mind is no longer reacting, it is revealing. What surfaces during these hours is often what has been waiting patiently beneath layers of distraction. Long-buried emotions, unanswered questions, and intuitive insights rise not to disturb you, but to be recognized. The soul does not communicate in dramatic language. It speaks through subtle signals: restlessness, sudden clarity, emotional memories, or a strong feeling that something needs attention. During waking hours, these signals are often overridden by logic or urgency. Silence removes that interference. When nothing else competes for your awareness, even the quietest inner message becomes audible. This is why early morning wakefulness feels different from insomnia. There is a sense of alertness rather than agitation, awareness rather than chaos. Many people misunderstand this experience because they associate silence with loneliness or discomfort. In reality, silence is where truth becomes accessible. It is where the mind stops performing and starts reflecting. The absence of external input allows internal patterns to reorganize. Thoughts that seemed confusing during the day begin to align naturally. Emotions that felt overwhelming suddenly make sense. Silence does not create these insights. It simply reveals what was already there. This is also why some of the most profound realizations in human history emerged during moments of solitude. Without external influence, the mind reconnects with its intuitive intelligence. At this hour, decisions feel more honest, self-reflection becomes less defensive, and awareness feels less filtered. The ego weakens and authenticity strengthens. You are not trying to impress, justify, or protect an image of yourself. You are simply present with what is real. The discomfort that sometimes accompanies this silence is not a sign that something is wrong. It often indicates that the mind is encountering truths it has postponed. Growth is rarely loud. It is quiet and often uncomfortable. When the soul speaks, it does not demand immediate action, but it does request acknowledgement. Ignoring this voice repeatedly does not silence it. It only causes it to return when silence is unavoidable. Engaging with this moment gently changes its impact. You do not need to analyze or solve everything. Simply listening, without judgment or urgency, creates a sense of inner alignment. This quiet listening builds trust between your conscious awareness and your deeper self. Over time, the mind learns that it does not need to interrupt your sleep to be heard, because it is being respected during waking life as well. Silence, when approached with awareness, becomes a source of clarity rather than confusion. It teaches you to differentiate between mental noise and inner truth. As you grow more comfortable with stillness, you begin to carry its benefits into your daily life. Decisions become clearer, reactions soften, and emotional balance improves. The soul does not speak louder when ignored, it waits patiently. And when silence arrives, it finally has the space to remind you of who you are and what truly matters. Comfort has a quiet way of convincing us that everything is fine, even when something essential is missing. When life feels predictable and routines run smoothly, we often mistake stability for fulfillment. Yet purpose does not grow in comfort alone. It emerges when something within us feels unsettled enough to demand change. That is why moments of interruption, especially those that disturb rest, often arrive when a deeper alignment is needed. Waking up in the early hours is one such interruption, subtle yet persistent, signaling that the life you are living may be efficient but not fully intentional. Purpose rarely announces itself at convenient times. It does not wait for schedules, nor does it respect the boundaries of comfort. Instead, it appears when the mind is quiet and defenses are low. During the day, comfort is reinforced by distractions and habits. At night, especially between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., those comforts lose their grip. The mind is no longer entertained or occupied, and purpose uses this opening to surface. The restlessness you feel is not a disruption of peace, but an invitation to examine whether your current path truly reflects your values. Many people associate purpose with grand ambition or dramatic change, but in reality it often begins as discomfort. A sense of restlessness, a quiet dissatisfaction, or persistent thought that refuses to disappear. Comfort tries to silence these signals by offering familiarity. Purpose, however, disrupts familiarity to create growth. When sleep is interrupted without obvious physical cause, it often indicates that the mind is processing something beyond routine concerns. It is questioning direction, meaning, and alignment. This interruption becomes more noticeable when you are avoiding these questions during the day. Busyness can act as a shield against self-inquiry. Achievements, responsibilities, and obligations provide a sense of progress, but they do not always provide purpose. When the day ends and the shield drops, the mind returns to what truly matters. The early hours strip life down to its essentials, leaving no space for distraction. What remains is the awareness of whether your actions and aspirations are in harmony. Purpose also challenges identity. Growth requires releasing outdated versions of yourself, and that process is rarely comfortable. When you are on the edge of change, whether professional, emotional, or personal, the mind becomes more alert. It is preparing you for transition. The early morning awakening can be seen as the mind rehearsing a future that has not yet been acknowledged consciously. It is not trying to create anxiety, it is preparing awareness. Rather than resisting this interruption, observing it with honesty reveals its message. What thoughts appear consistently during these moments? What feelings return despite being rationalized away? Purpose leaves patterns. It repeats itself until it is recognized. The discomfort you feel is not meant to exhaust you, but to redirect you. Ignoring it does not restore comfort, it only delays clarity. There is a significant difference between peaceful rest and unconscious comfort. Peace comes from alignment, while comfort can exist even in misalignment. When purpose interrupts comfort, it is guiding you toward a more conscious life. This does not always mean radical change. Sometimes it means small, meaningful adjustments, choosing authenticity over approval, depth over speed, intention over habit. As you learn to listen to these interruptions without fear, their intensity softens. Purpose does not need to disrupt what it can already guide. When awareness grows during the day, the mind no longer needs to wake you at night. What once felt like restlessness transforms into clarity, direction, and a quiet sense of inner confidence. Comfort may return, but this time it is supported by meaning rather than avoidance. Stress is often misunderstood because it is usually framed as a problem that needs to be eliminated. Modern life encourages the idea that calmness should be constant and discomfort should be avoided at all costs. Yet stress itself is not the true issue. It is a response, a signal that something in your internal or external environment requires attention. When viewed through this lens, stress becomes less of a punishment and more of a messenger, guiding awareness toward areas that need adjustment, clarity, or growth. During the day, stress is frequently managed through distraction. Work, conversations, entertainment, and obligations keep the mind occupied enough to prevent deeper reflection. This coping mechanism may reduce immediate discomfort, but it does not resolve the underlying cause. When night arrives and distractions fade, stress no longer has a place to hide. The early hours amplify what has been suppressed, not to overwhelm you, but to bring unresolved tension into conscious awareness. Stress is the mind's way of highlighting misalignment. It emerges when expectations exceed capacity, when values conflict with actions, or when emotions remain unexpressed. Waking up in the early morning with a racing or alert mind often indicates that the nervous system has been carrying a load that has not been acknowledged. The body rests, but the mind remains active because it senses unfinished emotional or cognitive processing. Labeling stress as negative often leads to resistance. Resistance, however, intensifies the very experience you are trying to escape. When you push stress away without understanding it, it adapts by becoming more persistent. Early waking can be seen as stress refining its approach. Instead of showing up as daytime irritation or fatigue, it appears in silence, where it can no longer be ignored. This shift is not a failure of coping, it is an evolution of awareness. When stress is approached with curiosity rather than judgment, its message becomes clearer. It may be pointing toward boundaries that need reinforcement, decisions that have been delayed, or emotions that require expression. Sometimes it reveals the cost of constantly prioritizing external demands over internal well-being. The mind does not create stress to punish you for being. You see, it creates stress to protect you from prolonged imbalance. Early morning stress often feels different from daytime anxiety. There is a clarity to it, a focused intensity, rather than scattered worry. This is because the mind is no longer reacting to immediate stimuli, it is reflecting. In this reflective state, stress highlights what truly matters beneath surface concerns. It narrows attention toward unresolved priorities rather than multiplying fears. Understanding stress as a teacher shifts the internal dialogue. Instead of asking how to make it stop, the focus moves to what it is trying to show. This approach reduces fear and builds self-trust. You begin to see that stress is not evidence of weakness, but of awareness. It indicates that the mind is sensitive enough to recognize when something is off balance. Ignoring stress repeatedly can lead to emotional exhaustion, but listening to it creates resolution. This does not require dramatic action. Often, acknowledgement alone reduces intensity. When the mind feels heard, it relaxes. Over time, consistent awareness during the day prevents stress from accumulating at night. The early morning wakefulness decreases not because stress has disappeared, but because its lessons have been integrated. Stress does not arrive to disrupt your life, it arrives to refine it. When you learn to interpret it correctly, it becomes one of the most effective tools for self-awareness and growth. Rather than seeing early waking as a sign of failure or fragility, it can be recognized as the mind's intelligent attempt to guide you back toward balance, clarity, and intentional living. The hours before dawn carry a unique quality of awareness that is rarely available during the rest of the day. When the mind is not pulled in multiple directions, it naturally settles into a state of heightened sensitivity and clarity. In this space even, A few moments of conscious reflection can have a profound impact on how the day unfolds. Awareness cultivated at night does not remain confined to those quiet hours. It subtly shapes perception, decision-making, and emotional responses long after the sun rises. When you engage in reflection during these early hours, the mind operates without external pressure. There is no urgency to respond, perform, or prove anything. This absence of demand allows thoughts to organize themselves naturally. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you begin to observe patterns. This observational state strengthens mental clarity, making it easier to distinguish between what is essential and what is merely habitual. As a result, the day that follows feels more intentional and less reactive. Nighttime awareness also influences emotional regulation. During the day, emotions are often suppressed to maintain functionality. Over time, this suppression creates internal tension. Early morning reflection provides a safe space for emotions to surface without judgment. When emotions are acknowledged rather than resisted, they lose their intensity. This emotional processing at night prevents emotional overload during the day, allowing you to respond with composure rather than impulse. Meditation, prayer, or quiet contemplation during these hours has a cumulative effect on mental strength. The mind learns stillness not as an escape, but as a skill. This skill carries forward into daily interactions. Challenges that once triggered stress begin to feel manageable. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer clouded by unresolved emotional noise. The calm developed in silence becomes a reference point the mind can return to even in chaos. Clarity gained at night often translates into confidence during the day. When you take time to understand your thoughts and intentions, you move through life with greater self-assurance. Actions become aligned with values rather than driven by pressure. This alignment reduces internal conflict, which in turn conserves mental energy. Instead of constantly negotiating with yourself, you act with quiet certainty. Nighttime awareness also enhances creativity and problem solving. The mind is most innovative when it is relaxed yet alert. Early morning reflection allows ideas to form without interference. Solutions emerge not through force, but through insight. These insights often feel effortless because they arise from a deeper level of understanding. When carried into the day, they improve productivity and focus. Consistency in nighttime awareness reshapes the relationship between rest and action. Sleep becomes deeper because the mind feels resolved rather than burdened. Waking hours become more effective because attention is directed rather than scattered. This balance creates a rhythm where effort and ease coexist. Power during the day does not come from pushing harder, but from being clearer. Over time, awareness practiced in silence strengthens resilience. You become less dependent on external validation and more grounded in internal stability. Situations that once felt overwhelming lose their emotional charge. This does not mean challenges disappear. It means you meet them with greater presence and strength. The quiet moments before dawn offer an opportunity to recalibrate. When used consciously, they act as a foundation for the entire day. Awareness cultivated in these moments does not announce itself loudly, but its influence is unmistakable. It shows in your calmness, your focus, and your ability to navigate life with steady confidence rather than constant effort. When you begin to listen within, something subtle yet powerful starts to change in the way life unfolds around you. Most external chaos is not created by circumstances alone, but by the internal state with which you meet them. When the mind is restless, even simple situations feel heavy. When the mind is centered, even complex challenges feel manageable. Inner listening is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about stabilizing yourself so the world no longer controls your emotional balance. Throughout the day, attention is constantly pulled outward. Responsibilities, expectations, opinions, and comparisons dominate awareness. In this outward-focused state, reactions become automatic. You respond before you reflect, speak before you understand, and decide before you feel aligned. Over time, this creates inner noise. That noise does not disappear on its own, it accumulates. Listening within creates a pause, and in that pause, order begins to return. When you pay attention to your inner state, you become aware of subtle signals, tension, fatigue, resistance, or quiet excitement. These signals are not obstacles, they are guidance. Ignoring them leads to imbalance, while acknowledging them creates harmony. As this awareness strengthens, your external life begins to reflect that balance. Conflicts reduce, not because people change, but because your reactions soften. Decisions improve, not because options disappear, but because clarity increases. Inner listening also transforms how you handle uncertainty. Instead of seeking constant reassurance from the outside, you develop trust in your own awareness. This trust creates emotional stability. When the mind is stable, situations lose their power to disturb. Challenges are approached with curiosity rather than fear, and setbacks are processed without self-judgment. The external world may remain unpredictable, but your internal response becomes consistent. This inner alignment has a direct impact on rest and recovery. A mind that feels heard does not need to remain alert at night. Sleep becomes deeper because unresolved thoughts are addressed consciously rather than suppressed unconsciously. The body follows the mind. As mental tension decreases, physical relaxation improves. Rest stops being something you chase and becomes something that happens naturally. Listening within also refines priorities. Many external pressures lose their urgency when viewed through internal clarity. You begin to distinguish between what is important and what is merely loud. This discernment simplifies life. Time is used more intentionally. Energy is protected and unnecessary stress fades. The outside world feels less demanding because you are no longer overextending yourself to meet every expectation. Relationships are also affected by this shift. When you are connected to your inner state, communication becomes more authentic. You listen better, react less defensively, and express yourself more clearly. This reduces misunderstandings and emotional friction. As inner calm increases, interactions become smoother, and external harmony follows naturally. Over time, this practice creates a feedback loop. Inner awareness brings external calm, and external calm reinforces inner awareness. Life does not become perfect, but it becomes manageable. You stop fighting every situation and start flowing through them with greater ease. Even difficult moments feel purposeful rather than overwhelming. Listening within is not a one-time act, it is a way of living. Each moment of awareness strengthens the connection between inner clarity and outer stability. As that connection deepens, life settles, not because problems vanish, but because you are no longer scattered. When the inside is aligned, the outside adjusts. And in that alignment, rest, focus, and peace emerge as natural states rather than constant struggles. So the next time you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., don't curse your sleep. Don't panic. Smile gently and understand. Life is giving you a sacred message. The universe is whispering, slow down. Look within. Realign. Remember, peace is not found by sleeping more, but by living more consciously. When you listen to your soul during the night, your days begin to make sense. And that is when true rest finally arrives. Thank you.